Well, good afternoon, friends. Welcome to another episode of Unbreakable Men. Gosh, there are so many moments in life, and I think a lot of times we find ourselves circling through hard things, hard moments. Sometimes they're our fault, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes situations literally just happen to us, and we find ourselves wondering, what do I do next? How do I get out of this scenario? How do I pull myself back together when things around me seem to be crumbling? Well, friends, today our conversation is going to take you into that space. I am very excited about my new friend, Jon Emery, who is going to share with us some situations that he faced in life that really felt incredibly challenging to him, and the mind shifting decisions that he had to make, as well as the people, the insulation, the community that he had to surround himself with. But I'm not going to go into all of the details. Let me start by giving you a little bit of his introduction, and then we're going to dig right in. So after losing a 20-year job and going through a surprising and painful divorce, Jon embarked on a journey of self-discovery. It led him to a deeper understanding of who he was, a stronger relationship with his family around him, and especially his children. He then started this journey of podcasting, and we're going to talk about how podcasting literally saved his life. He created this program called Life's Checkmark, which is now the top 10% of all of the rankings out there for podcasts, with over 150 episodes. He created a safe space for people like himself who really wondered what it would be like to find that beautiful community. And he gives people an opportunity to share their stories. So I am so excited to see him, to hear his wisdom. We're going to talk about all kinds of fun things today. And I don't know exactly where this conversation is going to go, but I do know this. It's going to go to the place of you understanding that inside of you, my friend, my visitor, there is a story to be told, a story to share, and somebody needs to hear your voice. So hold on to that thought as I bring my friend Jon onto the stage. Hey, Jon, welcome.
Hi, Teresa. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. Like you said, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm ready.
Well, you know what's cool about podcasts? We don't have to have an agenda.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly how my podcast is. It's just like people sharing their journey and just see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah. Well, the basis of this particular podcast, the Unbreakable Men Podcast, is to showcase what I like to say: real men, real stories, real transformation. And let me say this, I haven't shared this on a talk yet. I actually, for a long time, hated the word real men, because I have been in, the world long enough, and you hear things like real men do this, real men do that. When I say real men, I mean authentic men, men that know who they are and have come to the place of figuring that out and then showing up in the world. And Jon, I think that is something that you bring to the table that's beautiful. And so let's start right there. What makes you feel most authentic to who you are right now at this season in your life?
Yeah, I feel like I'm myself, right? I could do what I want to do, in a sense, when I want to do it, right?
Yeah.
And I can surround myself with the right people that I want to be with. Um, I'll be honest, it's one of my values. Like I went through that whole process about a year and a half ago, writing down my values, and that's one of my values. So I don't want to lose this, right? And I feel like a lot of people do lose this. They lose themselves in this world. As I looked back and consider what I was going through, just living life was basically a mold. I was just compressed in this mold and couldn't get out.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that that's one of your core values, because I was just kind of going there. Tell me and tell our guests a little bit, if you would, about that self-discovery journey, and then we're going to go back to this mold time, right? Because I feel like so many of us from birth, like we were created with this unique ability. In fact, the word tells us that we were created in God's image and his likeness, with the ability to create, right? And just this beautiful thing. But somewhere along the path, we were shaped and we were conditioned and we were told what to think, how to feel, when to show up, all of those things. So we're going to get back to that. So I got an open loop going on right now. But tell us how you came to the place of discovering that authenticity and transparency was a value of yours.
Yeah. So for me, I had to go through the hard times, right? So like you said, I lost my job after 20 years and then wound up going through, or at least getting the words divorced to me within the same year before it was processed. And like, those are two life-changing events. And for me to take that in a year and still have two kids, and like, I had to figure out where I was going to go. What am I going to do? So that was the beginning of it. And, I can go into a little bit before the word came up.
Sure.
How, okay. Yeah, sure. Why not? All right. Let's just
Why
see where this
not?
goes. So I'll share with you, like, and, as I believe, you don't share anything outside of your relationship. You keep it within the relationship itself and you try to work things out. So I never expanded and reached out to anybody for anything until things were just a little shaky at the house. I had no idea about anything going on. And so, like, who do I go talk to? There's not too many friends I would lean on and actually bring up a relationship. Like, that's just not me. So podcast, listen to a podcast, right? There's this great podcast. It's still out there. It's called Dad's Edge. I don't listen to it anymore, but it's available. They had a membership, for so much a month where it's just men and they talk all different things about life. So I never jumped on one of them, not knowing where things were going to go, but I did meet like 4 or 5 great men virtually through the phone, text, whatever, so we don't lose our minds. And the one gentleman that I consider him like my coach, that helped me in a sense guide along the way, every time I would Facebook message him, right? Every time you start thinking, right? And so, people could take this however they want. So one thing I do remember is just breathe, right? Because you're alive, you're well, there's other things going on around you. You'll figure it out. Right. And I remember him just saying, just breathe. Right. And the other thing too is don't dive into all the little things, because it's what we do. We go in, is this what that person meant? Does it go this way or this way? Or, maybe it's all the other ways. I have no idea. So he was gracious enough to respond to me whenever he got a chance to. And then he wound up doing this masculinity course. And I'm like, what is this? Right. Like, I never dove into masculine, feminine energy whatsoever. So I jumped on it. It was just a 4-week program, one time a week, me and another guy and him. And, the first 2 weeks I lost my mind. Like, I just, I was not in the right headspace. And, I showed it obviously emotionally, but then the last two sessions, it was just, he's like, you sound better. You look better. I was collected and more calm. And this is before the word even came to me. But what I think this allowed me to do is to be in that place of acceptance and okay if that word ever came up. Because I was not the one that would have been, hey, we're done. You know what I mean? I was let's try and figure things out. Let's talk about things. But when that came up, I was pretty much ready. You know what I mean? And that's what I truly believe. So like that, I say that was like the beginning part prior to the word. And then I was like, okay, now this happened. Now I got to carry on and figure out how am I going to do it after this? Because we had to figure everything, with the divorce, you had to figure everything else out after that. Right. So that's what's got me started to, who am I? Where am I? And this is just the beginning. Like, I didn't know right away. That's for sure. It took me some time. I would say a year or more to be like, okay, I feel pretty good right now where I'm at. And I've come a long way. It's been about 4 or 5 years in that area. So it's amazing how time moves fast, but yet slow. And
well, when you're walking through it, it feels like quicksand, right? And then when you look back, you're like, whoa, that was a tidal wave. Like, what happened?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So I want to piggyback on that for a minute. Number one, I would love to say, I think it was very bold of you to reach out and to receive help from somebody. That's so important. And it led you obviously on a really cool journey. But you made a comment, and I think that this is, again, back to one of those words that I talked about earlier, which is programming. Something told you in your mind, as we all are told something, right? But something told you in your mind that we keep the relationship on the inside, right? And I wonder if you could elaborate on that concept a little bit, of what it was that made you feel that way. And now you obviously have the future bright. You already know everything about who you want, like who you want to become and what you want to surround yourself with. And so I'm pretty sure that you're going to have future relationships and they're going to be amazing, right? Because now you know who you are. Now, looking at from that lens, if you were to go back into a place where you felt like, okay, there's something going on here, would you rewrite that script around what you keep internal and what you share, and or how you receive help when you face challenges?
I think what I would rewrite is the relationship within the two to communicate more and to go in a deeper level, right? And not be afraid of making the other, not be afraid of feeling like you're going to make the other person have pain from sharing what you think and what you feel. But like for me, I would have to be on the other side, receiving, accepting, if I have to apologize for whatever reason, right? And then that person can also, receive that as well. And then the thing could be done, right? And then there's other areas where, if it's external factors that are coming in and it's really not the person, it's you two come together to fight whatever that problem is. Not, you're the problem that caused this problem. That's not how it should be.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. That's how I would look at it now. Now I would still keep everything I can in with the relationship, because once we start venturing outside of that, then we start allowing other people, other podcasts or whatever come into our head and be like, yeah, they're right. We're starting getting all these terms and stuff and starting to agree, that's not always true. I don't believe all that. So you got to be careful.
Yeah. I think that part of this is the self-discovery work that you've done. See, when we don't know who we are, we hear the other people's voices and that impacts us, right? You talk about the mold situation earlier. We become molded by our outside influences into some sort of conformity, whatever that looks like. And I don't know about you, but I don't want the worldly view to dictate my relationship, and so much of that noise will come from that place, right? So I 100% agree that once you truly know who you are, you can then with vulnerability, but also authenticity, show up in a different way. And, you can also say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And it's okay. Like, this is who I am. And this is how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to have these triggers and stuff. There's going to be people I never met before that experience whatever in life, and I could trigger them in any way.
Yeah.
And I don't know it, so so we have to sit down and talk. That's what it has to come down to.
Yeah. So when it comes to communication, one of the things we have a program that we've launched called UnBreakable Marriages. And one of our core pillars in that is communication, because I feel like lack of communication is the true killer of all relationships, not just husband and wife, but work relationships, parent relationships, all of the things. Because when we don't communicate, we literally are withholding this beautiful gift of inside information from the person, yet we expect a response, right? So can you talk about that, what your views are on communication? And I mean, literally, you are a communication expert. When you think about sharing your story and podcasting and all of that, and there's power in the words that we say. So talk to us a little bit about your take on communication and how you use that to serve people.
Yeah. So if we're going to go male and female over here, right, we already both are different. Yeah. And, I'm already looking at what's the point, what's the problem, how do I fix it? And, that's kind of the problem there. We have to kind of back off of that a little bit and just hear whatever you as a female would have to say. Right. So a few things I might think that I've learned is, I could ask you, do you want my advice or you want me to listen? And basically, a lot of times you guys just want us to listen, but then we're too quick to solve a problem, which is probably not the problem. You probably don't want to fix anyways, because you already know how to figure out and fix the problem. You just need to let it out.
We just needed to vent. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then the other way is, I love this example of you cook dinner or whatever, and you tell your husband to go ahead and, put the food away when you're done, when dinner is done. And so he's just going to grab the pots and pans with the food in and put it in the refrigerator because that's the logical thing to do. Why am I going to put in Tupperware?
Dirty another dish.
Yeah, exactly. So we're on the same page here so far. This is good. And, you're going to wake up and find that it's not in the Tupperware, the dishes aren't clean, all this and everything else thereafter, when all you did was say, clean up at the dinner and put the food away. And then that's the problem there. So really it should be, okay, you want me to put the food away. How do you want me to put the food away? And you explain it and you go back and forth, and they call it mirroring. So you it might be 2 or 3 times, but eventually you'll be like on the same page, and there's no arguing. There's nothing after, and everything comes together. It sounds like nobody wants to do that. It is work,
It is work.
You have to be on the same page. You have to be willing to work on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the real quick things I can think off of the communication part, because that was part of the whole masculinity course that I took too. And I don't remember everything, but he had a diagram of, like you hit a wall, a woman and a male will hit a wall, and you have to figure out how to get around that wall. And use stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that's brilliant. I also think, looking back at your story, just from the piece that you shared here, is how for some reason he happened to be in your life right before you needed him.
Yeah.
Right. And I always think about now we don't always think about that, because that quote that says you can't see the forest through the trees, or you can't see the trees through the forest, right? One of those. You know what I'm talking about. But in the middle of our situation and our problems that we're in, sometimes we don't see the lifeboats that are out there that are trying to prepare you and to make you take heed or see that something is coming. Looking through your life, could you see any other situations in your life maybe that developed you as the amazing human that you are today, where you're like, oh, that was a guidepost right there?
I'll be honest with you. Everything that led me to where I am today after the word divorce has been a blessing, because before I started the podcast, I had 10 Facebook Lives on entrepreneurs. I was doing something different. It was like 2 years before I even started the podcast. And one of them was a podcaster. He doesn't live too far from me. He had an event going on, about 2 years after the word divorce. And I just went. I never did that by myself, with no family or anything. And that's the day, one of those days out of the two. I woke up, went to breakfast, and this one guy was there after everybody left, and he asked what I want to do, and I said, start a podcast. It pretty much burned it in my head. And then it took me 6 months after that to start, right? Because it just was something where I had, doubt and everything set in. But that led me to, having these, I met somebody there that came on my podcast. Now, I'm a part of his group, entrepreneur group, mastermind, and all that stuff, which allowed me to find other people and surround myself with those good people and go on these events and meet all these incredible people, not just through podcasting, but just like in person too. And, I just went to Texas not long ago, and I was able to meet people I had as a podcast guest and meet them in person. And, like, that's awesome. Like, I think that's the coolest thing. So, you can only go backwards and connect the dots thereafter. And so that's how I can go ahead and relate everything back to, how I am where I am today. Yeah. And not, and then now speaking, like I'm like, what's this? Like, this is all new. And that just started this year. So I'm enjoying it. And it is hard to sometimes go back and look at things if you're stuck in the mindset of not growing. But once you start growing, I think you could dive a little deeper and say, yeah, you know what? There was that one point. I think that's where things were changing. And you could have caught it, but you weren't seeing it then. You were somewhere else. Yeah. In that mode that, the blinders are on, or whatever you want to call it. And not just relationships, but anything.
Sure. Absolutely. And I'm reminded of the quote, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? When you're ready. And sometimes we're ready in our soil moments, like at the rock bottom, right? And we think, and there's this opportunity for a mindset that everything's wrong. I'm never going to recover. I don't know how I'm going to get past this situation, yada, yada, yada. And we can find ourselves getting stuck in the soil, the crushing moments. But there had to be something that shifted for you that helped you make a choice that says, I'm not sitting here. Like, I don't like this, but I'm not going to stay. Can you tell us what that looks like for you?
Yeah, first, I kept telling myself I'll figure it out, right? And it wasn't going to be right away, but so I'll share. I worked on myself mentally and emotionally first. Thereafter, right? I have to build myself up inside out, and that allowed me to first start off with a morning routine, and really that's pretty much where it started. And like tell myself I got it, write what I'm grateful for, meditate, listen to some good stuff. And I worked on myself physically after that, right? So I had a gym in the basement for years. I got it from somebody else, and I thought I had this time. Now I have the time. I'm like, oh,
Sure.
okay, so here I am doing this, and ultimately it didn't work out for me in the best way because I tried to go buy a book and I followed that, and then I wound up hiring a trainer who we both know, and
you can shout out Gordon. I'm sure he would love it.
I don't know. Is he there? I'm not sure if he's listening. But yeah, so I like that changed my physical appearance, and health wise as well in 6 months. And without that, like accountability and everything, not just not in fitness, but everything,
Right.
it is a game changer. And so like, these were the first areas I worked on, and I don't tell everybody just work on it the way I did,
Sure.
but I do feel like you have to find yourself inside first rather than reaching out right away.
Absolutely. Hey, I wonder, did you ever get the book Miracle Morning?
I did it, and a long time ago. Yes.
Okay.
And it was probably before everything happened, but and it's about the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, about morning routines. And
Exactly.
now, whatever those routines look like are going to be different for all of us, right? One of my favorite psychologists is Carl Jung. And he has this beautiful quote that I probably will get tattooed on me if I ever get another tattoo. And he said, those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken. And I'm like, that is a brilliant quote around the power of self discovery, right? Because we happen to spend our entire lives, it seems like, looking at external situations, hoping, wishing, thinking, all of that. But when we look inside and we figure out this beautiful human that we were uniquely positioned and created to become, it's like everything just starts to develop, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's yeah, you can take, like, we could talk about TikTok and all that stuff, right? You take all that in, and that's going to just hurt you internally.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff out there. Don't get me wrong, but which ones are you picking? That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Isn't that interesting that we both share that philosophy, yet we're both online and we're like, people, you should listen to us.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. I love it.
Don't listen to all that other
I can take
garbage.
it back now. Can I take? Yeah, I don't know.
My doctor says 2 rules of life: don't trust anyone. We're all gonna die.
That's right. Exactly right. Yep. Be yourself.
I
That's
mean,
all you got to do.
yeah, yeah. So I think that it's so beautiful that you shared this. And I will say, because our listeners, they might be wondering, where can they go for situations like this? And the Unbreakable platform, we really cover a lot of what you're talking about. And it's so beautiful to see this common thread, because the very first pillar that we start with in our mentorship program is self-discovery. And, a lot of people coin that as identity. I think identity is a piece of self-discovery, and you have to be careful with the word identity, because I can place identity on you. Your job can place identity on you.
True.
In fact, a lot of times it does. It gives you this positional identity. And then what happens when it's stripped away? Right.
Yeah.
And obviously, in your situation, that became a thing. So, talk to us a little bit about that.
The job was in the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. So I was there for 20 years, basically almost right out of high school. worked myself up a little bit in there. And yeah, you put all in that hard work, I got a lot of vacation time and everything else like that, build it up, and, my pay, and to be told that, hey, we're closing the door because we're not profiting, versus another plant they had, and we're closing. And then, so I was in the logistics area, shipping, receiving, warehouse, whatever you want to call it. And so like October of the year before I was gone, like 60 people walked out in production, like they were done. And so there was a handful of us still thereafter, but I was one of the last 3 people to walk out the door. It was that was even crazy. So to first of all be told about it, because I was very, very positive, like this isn't true, this is happening, until they said, oh, in the meeting when this is happening, right? And to see everybody walk out the door, people a lot older than me, not knowing where they're going to go, all that stuff, even though you have severance packages and everything, they're still kind of clueless. But it's also, after a while, it turned out to be like an opportunity in a way. You had to look at it. It took a while to get there. But before I even got to that point, like I stayed there till May of the following year after that October that was mentioned, because me and a couple other guys had to make sure everything was gone, everything was stripped out, and make sure, the contractors came in and cleaned it all. And just to go from this huge manufacturing company to a shell, and then walk in, be one of the last ones to walk away, was devastating as well. Sure. But yeah, and then trying to swing that and go, okay, now what? Because I wanted out. I wanted out for so long, but I probably would have never left. Yeah. And so it just became that time to leave, whether it's going to be the right time or not. It's just now. And I had to figure out, where am I going to go from here? So that was rough. I'll be honest with you, it is rough. And so, identity, right? Yeah, I consider myself in that job. I was there all the time. People call me if they needed help, whatever. And, if you wanted to, like, oh, I'm the big man, if, you just keep showing up for those people. And then to have that all stripped away and, you put all that time and effort into it, was kind of tough. Especially the people that were there longer than me and getting close to retirement. I mean, they've probably been there for almost 40 some years. Sure, it's life-changing. And then I had to shift, what is my identity going to be now? Who do I want to show up as? So if somebody goes, who are you? What do? You tell them basically your job. I'm a husband, father, parent, whatever it is, right? And that's how your identity is. But really self-discovery, really, it's who are you? What's at your heart? What do you want to give back? That's kind of how I look at it.
Oh, I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, because when we don't, what's the outcome, right? If we look at it to where we truly are defined by a title, and maybe that title is husband, and that shifted, or, logistics supervisor, and that shifted. Those are external identities, but the internal, as you mentioned, is I enjoy showing up as a transparent person who is authentic, right? That's a core identity that I have. I have a voice in this world with a story that needs to be shared. That's an identity to have, right? Yeah. But you had to come to a place of discovering those things. And a lot of it is through realizing the things that you don't want.
Yeah. And it's funny how it just happens to be when things are stripped away from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to go through some hard times to figure out what's the right thing for us.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, that goes, so our first pillar is self-discovery, and we walk people through a journey, a lot of assessments and things like that, but really reflection time. What is it that I want? Who is it that I am? It's funny that you said you ask people who they're at a meeting, and they just rattle off a title. I literally, Jon, I have been running networking organizations for like 24 years. And one day, and I think it was 2010, I was leading this networking breakfast. And I asked that question. I said, I'm going to help you guys create your elevator pitch, and I want to know who you are. And then literally I felt convicted in my spirit, and I sat down and pulled out a sticky note, and I started writing down all the titles that I am. And I just said, oh, what if that goes away? Am I nothing? No, we're not nothing. We need to figure out who we are in case any of those things go away. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because eventually they might go away.
They probably will, right? While
Yep.
we're daughters, we may not always have our parents. Or daughter's son, excuse me, right? While we're, married, we may not always have our spouse. While we're parents, things can happen. While we're employed, we may not always have the job, but we always have who we are. And it's important to understand who that person is and honor them. So I love that. So self-discovery is our first pillar. Our second is mindset and mind shifting. And it sounds like that was definitely something that you had to come to terms with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I'll be honest with the 4 Agreements became one of the big books for me that helped me become a better person in my eyes.
Tell me, what is there like one thing in that book that really stood out for you?
Yeah, don't take things personally.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's like the golden key right there.
Yeah. So good. I don't know that everybody's read it. I have a copy of it by my bedside, an amazing book, but it really opens up our thoughts, right? And some perspective around things. Pillar number 3 is our belief system. And I think we kind of already spoke to that as we talked about kind of that mold and getting a chance to ask ourselves, is this something that I even really believe? Have you ever faced that where you're like, I believe something, and then you're like, do I really believe that?
You have to think yourself. Yeah, you have to ask yourself twice and look at. So like I have my values and my vision and all that stuff on the wall, and so that's like, and that takes time to find who you are, where you want to be, and who you want to become. But I think it's going through like the stuff you're talking about, putting in the hard work. I don't know. It's funny how I got to where I am today, right? And a lot of us get stuck in that mold, I call it, and basically that's kind of how life's checkmark is, right? So I looked at my life having to go to work, get a job, get good pay, 401k, get a house, family, whatever. And that was my check mark in a sense. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Now, I can't say for sure that my parents said, do this, do this, do this, right? But I saw, and that's exactly what I repeated. And that is why I created the podcast. It is so you can allow yourself to hopefully open up to what other people are sharing when they come on. So you can check off your life, not somebody else's life or who they want you to be. And it's exactly what you're doing with the program that you have, and people walking through that and anything, that we're talking about right now in life, to just be themselves.
Yeah, it's so funny. Have you've been to Texas? Yes, because you were here not that long ago. I have to ask you, did you get some Texas barbecue?
I did. I bought the Frito bowl thing or something. I don't know. It wasn't the best thing in the world. But the guys I met up with, they were podcast guests, and I got both of them together. They're both from Dallas. They didn't know each other, but we were talking for like 2 hours, and they told me about places where you just get like a slab of meat on a tray or something. I'm like, okay, now I have to go back, and
you have to come back.
Yeah.
I want to share with you a story around that slab of meat, right? Because this is so good, and maybe it'll ring true for somebody that's listening today, particularly around beliefs and what you just talked about, which is more is caught than taught, right? But anyway, so there is this young man who shows up at his grandmother's house for a family reunion, you guessed it, in Texas. And grandma pulls out all of the delicious food, and he can just smell the aroma of the barbecue, particularly brisket. Now, we've gone to other states, and they do not have brisket the way we do it. Some of them turn it into like corned beef or something like that. But ours is like juicy with all of the seasoning seared into it, smoked to absolute perfection. And he notices something in the pan, and he's like, Mom's in the kitchen. What are you doing? He asked her. And she's like, what do you mean? He goes, where's the burnt ends of this brisket? And she goes, what do you mean? He goes, the best part of the brisket, where is it? right? And she was like, oh, go ask grandma. Grandma, just ask her. I don't know what you're talking about. And so he goes to grandma in the living room and he says, Grandma, where's the burnt ends? Where's the good part of this meat? What happened to it? Why is it not in here? I can smell it. I want to taste it, right? And she goes, oh, that's the way I've always cooked it. What are you talking about? Go ask Nana. So finally, 3 generations down, he finds Nana and he says, Nana, I know you know Texas barbecue and you know meat. He says, where's the burnt ends? Where's the good part of this brisket? He goes, why did you cut it off? And she said, honey, my pan's only so big. So literally, she took this beautiful big brisket, cut it up in a little piece to stick it in a pan. And for generations, her children have lost the juices of life because she was limited by a pan, right?
Yeah.
And I think about our beliefs and the things that are passed, because more is caught than taught, and how much of the juices of life we miss out on. And Jon, in your particular story, how much of the juices of life that you now can taste today, although you didn't eat that because you didn't eat that in Texas, but how much of the juices in life that you have access to today did you not have because somebody else's beliefs shaped you?
I have so much changed and been pursuing different things. So, I went down there for a speaking event to speak.
Yeah.
And that's changed a lot. Like I never saw that coming. I have the opportunity now. I had the opportunity of running my own event back in January and having my kids there. Like, I'm trying to open up doors to where they are not stuck in that mold. They can do whatever they want. It's their choice in life. But if you can broaden the horizon and say you can do this and do that, it's entirely up to you. You don't have to do what I'm telling you to do, but here's your options, right? Yeah, I just think that that's been the best thing for me so far is, again, carrying this along and looking at things as an opportunity instead of, what is it? It happens for you, not to you, right? And that was that took a long time for me to get that in my head too. So
sure.
Before we were talking about this before we hit record here, and before going to Texas, my car died or whatever, and I rented a car, and there was I don't know what the real reason was, but I'll tell you the gas mileage was better on the rental, and it wasn't mine, so I wasn't beating it up, mine that so. There was it happened for me for a reason, right? And even though it was a struggle to get through and make it there and still have an incredible time, I have to look at it as like an opportunity, and it's tough, but I think everybody can do it. They just, again, Teresa, it's doing stuff like you're creating. It's surrounding yourself with the right people that want to build you up and lift you up and see you become who you're meant to become, not just keep you down here because they don't want you to succeed.
Yeah. On your journey, Jon, now I know that the work dynamics had already shifted, so you already had a transition there. But on your journey of becoming this amazing human, unbreakable man that you are, did you find resistance from people around you? That we've heard of the whole crab effect, right? You put some crabs in a bucket, and one of them gets bold and courageous and wants to climb out and wants to create a better life for itself or whatever, and the other ones, try to pull it down, and then eventually they'll cut his legs off, right? Did you find yourself in a situation where people were unintentionally trying to hold you back?
Before the job and divorce, yes, I would say yes. After that, I don't think I had too many people. To be honest with you, the circle got smaller, and there isn't. You get to know who your real friends and family are. Sure. After going through everything, they start looking at you from a different point of view. You lost that identity in a sense. Who are you? And now that I know Alex Hormozy calls it like the gray area or something like that. And I believe that's where I'm at. Like your old friends are here, your new friends are over here, but you're in the middle and you're trying to move. I personally, for myself, joining entrepreneur groups and going to masterminds and all that stuff has surrounded me with some great people that want to encourage me and keeping me move forward. And I do the same with them as well. So there's always that reciprocation going back and forth. And yeah, resistance, I would say if I had any, for the most part, it was myself, resisting myself for who I could become rather than somebody else tell me different,
Yeah.
or their actions making me choose differently.
Self-sabotage is a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think we all face it at certain levels. And, our brain is wired for protection mode. And so, when we're trying something new, you know how it is. Like you go and you talked about the gym in your basement. The first time you did it, you were probably like, forget this crap, that hurt, right?
Yeah. And then Gordon's got me like losing all this weight in the beginning. I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah.
Like, but you had to surround yourself and you had to build new muscle memory, right? You've
Yes.
had, I don't know how many years. We don't necessarily talk about age on this show. I certainly don't share mine. But you have so many years of conditioning and programming and all of that, that to go against that, your brain is like hardwired to say, I don't think we want to do that because it hurt, or because you might get hurt, or because that may not work out, right? Our
Yeah.
brains are designed to keep us protected, but our minds are actually the ones that run the show, not our brains. And that's why mindset makes so much of a difference in what we do.
Yeah. I totally agree. So
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of surrounding yourself with the right people, I would love for you to talk about. You told me in one of our conversations prior to today that you rediscovered who you are, and that you've had this new lens on life through podcasting. And I would love for you to share with us, because I know there are so many people that, number one, maybe they have this passion or desire in them that they think, wouldn't it be cool? Like, wouldn't it be cool to try something? But then they get in their head and they start looking at outside people that are doing it already, that have probably put in the 10,000 hours of becoming a genius, but you don't see that work, right? And so they get in their head and that comparison kicks in, and then that stalls them out. So can you tell us a little bit about how did you decide to pull the trigger, and what has evolved since then in the podcast arena? I already know top 10%. So how did that happen?
Yeah. Consistency. Yeah. Consistency. Right. I just kept going. And I'll be honest with you. Like, so that guy told me at the breakfast table, he said, strip the audio from your first 10 Facebook lives I had. And it had nothing to do with my podcast.
Okay.
And I waited 6 months before I even said, okay, I'm going to do it. And again, it had nothing to do with the podcast it is today. I did that, got me to launch it. And I was able to find people to be guests. I could start creating my own episodes. And I just kept showing up once a week at least. Sometimes I post 2 if I have the time and it was there. But that's what got me going. And I didn't create it to have an audience. I didn't create it to monetize. I just wanted people to share their journey, to hopefully it could reach the other person on the other side that needs to know that they're not alone. They can get through it too, whether they're reaching out to me, that guest, or somebody else. Right. There's life-changing events that are always happening when people are listening to a podcast. Like for me, example, if I didn't listen to that Edge one, I don't know what could have happened. My coach, and he still says it to this day, that 10 men commit suicide every day from divorce. And so I don't know if I could have been that person. I'm not, but it happens more often than what you think. And it's devastating. So to have a platform like podcasting out there for whatever you want to do, if it's a comedy show, music, whatever, everybody has, a podcast for something. It's something to create and call it your own. And, you can be you and just show up as you. You don't have to be that person that, you have to be Joe Rogan or anything like that. They're them. They're not trying to be somebody else and imitate that.
Yeah.
So you just be yourself, and that will gravitate the right people that need to hear it, watch it. So I think it's just taking that plunge and just go, let's just see how it works. You don't have to be the top 10, the top 5%. You don't have to be any of that, but just imagine, Teresa, you have this going on, and I had about 150 episodes right now, and most of them are guests. Some of them came on twice, but just think of all the people I had on sharing me, their journey, their information, the stuff the question I ask at the end, I got the feedback from how they went through the journey and experienced it and what they learned. I took all that in, right? And I get to use whatever I want as I ask them questions.
Right.
That's a lot of people around the world I would never met in person at all. And there's a lot of people I've met that never even got on the podcast, and we just have a relationship, for whatever reason, things could happen where they just couldn't make it on time or whatever. And we just unfortunately can't reschedule sometime, but great people. And so you're building this network. It's a spider web in a sense. It just keeps going, stretching out. It's fun. I really enjoy it. I'm really excited for what's to come. I'm happy for where I'm at now. I share with you, I didn't see this all coming. I'll be in 3 books this year and speaking engagements. I have a couple more coming up, and like that was not on my list from the beginning. It never was. But now it's just growing into that and going on other podcasts, people coming on mine, collaborating. It's fun. I enjoy it very much. And if it's something somebody wants to try and do, I say do it. Yeah. Just do it.
I feel like a lot of us have the disease called procrastination, or excuse me, the disease called perfectionism, which leads to a manifestation of procrastination, right? And I think about, God, what would have happened if we would have thought as a baby, man, I can't start unless I can run. And we would have stayed on our 4s or never rolled over, right? As a baby, like how much life we would have missed if we would have really thought that we had to hit the ground running in order to just hit the ground, Yeah. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And so you kind of coined the phrase podcastination. Did I say that right?
Podcastination.
Podcastination.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So that's basically like, stop podcastinating, stop thinking about it and let's get going. So I did create that course, it's called Prevent Podcastination. So, walk you through the steps to start a podcast, figure out why you're starting a podcast, and then launch it, and get you in the top. You're in the top 1% if you're over 21 episodes. Not that you're going to be ranked that on Apple or anything like that, but that's how many people fall off before they get there. Wow. So 90% don't get past episode 3. So it just tells you how many podcasts out there are dead. And I don't want that to be whoever I'm working with.
So you had a post today, I think it was today, that said, how many of you guys have heard that everybody and their dog has a podcast, right? Yeah. So what prompted that question?
It's because I was at a speaking event back in January, and somebody came by. He's like, "Oh, everybody has a podcast." I've heard dog as well before, and I'm like, "There's like a billion people in the world." I said, "Everybody has a podcast," and he's like, "Well, no, not really, I guess." And that was enough to just make them move on and not. But I mean, so the opportunity is there, and there's only 400 to 500,000 that actively post once per month. And so if you're doing more than that, you're way ahead of the game. Yeah, it's not. And again, it's not all about numbers. Everybody thinks it is, but it's not.
Sure.
You're going to attract the right audience for who you are.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny also that so many of us, we have that piece of our brain, that reticular activating system in our brain, that as soon as you start doing something, like you drove that car and maybe you loved it, maybe you didn't, but probably since then you've seen a bunch of those cars, right? Yeah. I know every time we get a new vehicle, we're like, oh, this is the best thing. Everybody should have one. You're like, crap, everybody has one.
Exactly. Yep.
But it's really, we've put it out and we're now attracting things to us. And that is a beautiful thing to be aware of. And it's also a trap, I think, because so many times it causes people to say no to something that they're really trying to cast out into the world, right? So many people didn't get their real estate license because they thought everybody was a realtor. So many people, didn't do the podcast because they thought everybody was doing it. Regardless of what other people are doing, nobody has your story.
Right. So true. And Mel Robbins started and she's like, who's going to listen to me? And now she's way up there, right?
And they're like, who doesn't listen to Mel?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you don't know.
Yeah. You don't know. You don't know. Well, okay, so there are multiple ways that people can, obviously they're going to listen to this, and they're going to be excited to get to know you, and they're going to be grateful for your sharing of your story. I'm sure they're going to want to know 3 books. What are those 3 books that you've written in? So can you share that?
Yes, they're collaborations. So there's a couple of stories in each one. One's actually being published, I think, now.
Okay.
And then the other 2 will probably come out later in the year. I think one of them be in August. So they're basically sections of my journey in a sense. The one that's coming out now is faith-based. So me, finding myself with God about 2.5 years ago, because that was another part of my area I had to work on that I wanted to. So I added that, and then the other 2 are going to be probably more based around the podcasting. I took this risk and jumped in and decided to start a podcast and just see what happens. And here we are. Yeah. And this is, it opens up so many doors you never saw coming. You can connect with so many people. I got a guy I know that's on episode 45, and he started in February. Now everybody's different, so he's just running with it and going crazy and having fun with it. But it's so cool to see stuff like that going.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of areas for those books.
Yeah, that's fun. And book collaborations are a huge opportunity. We're actually creating one for Unbreakable Men because there are times when people are going to hear your story like this. And there's also people that just love the actual hard book, right? They want to read it. They want to ingest it. They want to feel it. And they want to go back and highlight. Like, I can't highlight a podcast, right? No. I can push play again, but and maybe you should invent that. You can send me royalties later.
I will too.
But, there are different reasons for it. So I am proud of you for stepping out and putting your name out there. And one really cool thing about doing a book collaboration, how many authors were in those books with you?
Probably close to 20 for each one.
For each one. So your ecosystem just multiplied times 20 per book, right? Exactly. So everybody that's going to read the book for Johnny is now going to read Jon's book. Right? I mean, it's incredible.
And the one author, publisher, he sent the previous book to me, and I picked out a few people that have became a guest on my podcast already. So it's just amazing how things just work out that way.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Jon, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I know you're going to go ahead and book your ticket to, Texas and get some brisket.
That's right.
But is there any, last ideas or thoughts that you would like to share with a group of men who are discovering their own unbreakable lives?
Yeah, I would say to them too, again, don't get caught inside in your own head, right? And reach out to somebody. If it has to be a man, great. If it's a woman that you need to address anything to, then go for it. Don't be afraid. Yes, there could be times when you could be a little too vulnerable sometimes, but then who you're talking to, right? Is it the right person? You have to figure that part out. And, for me, it sometimes, I say that, your family supports you, but they might not be the best person or people that are going to help you along the way. So they might support you to a certain point, right? So you're going to have to find, I believe for me, it's been the strangers, and they supported me a lot more than my own family. And friends that I've had in the past. So I would say, venture out, look, jump on a podcast like I did and join something if you need to in any way, shape, or form. You can reach out to me and I can connect you with whoever I can. I had a gentleman, I was on his podcast, and he was talking about he was going through a divorce. And I said, here, look, jump in this men's group. Another guy I know that runs one, and see if it helps you out. I told him my 2 cents. And hopefully, they connected and go from there. But open up. Don't hold it all inside. And that's what we do. Like as a man, like we hold it all, and I'll be honest, it's mostly in your shoulders, and it's just going to build up, and you don't want that rage coming out or anything like that for the wrong person. Maybe it's your kid that just sets you off. You don't want that. So just start sharing.
I love that. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for trusting others to support you, and for being that trusted support for so many. I know that this conversation will help somebody find peace in the situation that they're walking into. And that's what this is all about. At the end of the day, we're not a sum of the events that we walk through. We're the human that we become in the process. And
Right.
we want to help people become the most amazing human that they were created for. And those events, they don't define us, right? They may have helped to chisel and to do things to give us this new just aspect and perspective on life, and maybe some empathy muscle to be able to see other people and serve them in a new capacity. But I want to say thank you for being bold and for sharing and for not holding it all in, because that's what people need. And, when we do hold it in, it manifests in other ways, health issues, suicide issues, so many ways that it can come out. And that prohibits the amazing growth and potential that you have to bring into the world. So thank you for stepping in for yourself. And in doing so, you're changing the world, my friend, one podcast at a time.
That's it. That's right.
Well, thank you for being my guest. I know we're going to have your contact information in the show so that people can reach out to you. But thank you for your time today. And we will look forward to chatting soon and connecting, because we got a lot of work to do, friend.
Yes, we do. Yeah, this has been great, Teresa. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Well, friends, thank you for joining us today on this amazing podcast. I know Jon's story, beautiful, will reach into your heart and remind you that you're not alone, and that in fact, the way to finding the best version of you is not a lonely path. Grab a friend, grab a colleague, grab somebody from a book that you've met or a podcast that you listen to, and do this journey together. We were not meant to be on an island. We were part of a body, and part of becoming unbreakable is a solid foundation of those that will walk this journey with you. So God bless you all. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, continue building your unbreakable life.